ESPN.com NFL Insider KC Joyner here as the Eagles move on. And if I was to say to you, Casey, the Eagles won the game because, how would you answer that?
The Falcons took the bait. We talked last week about how the Eagles would want the Falcons to get into a smash-mouth football game, a low-scoring smash-mouth game, and the Falcons said not only did they do it, the Falcons jumped into it and willingly said, yeah, we'd love to play that type of game, which is exactly what they shouldn't do. So I think that's the biggest thing is that they set the trap and the Falcons bit.
You know, the Eagles, we talked about, they were better on the defensive front and the offensive front, and those two fronts were really the difference in the game.
What I don't understand is the Falcons last year they've got the smallest, fast defense, right? It's built to play with the lead. Is what that type of defense is. Tony Dungy used to have it over in Indianapolis, and he always just tell people, "I've got a small defense, but yeah," he said, "we're built to play with the lead. We get out 10-0, we can just unleash our pass rushers and get after people." That's what the Falcons' defense was, and now the defense they're playing now, that's not. They're not. That defense is not made to fight a smash mouth game. So it just boggles my mind that the Falcons did it, but they did, and the Eagles took advantage.
Eagles ran the ball 32 times, not for a lot of yards, but they, really, I think the 32 runs maybe wore down Atlanta, and then when they needed to get in a rhythm in the passing game, they were able to because it seemed that Atlanta just couldn't get to Foles.
Yeah, that's a big part of what it was, is saying let's go ahead and wear down the defense. Let's go ahead and wear down those pass rushers. Again, smallish defense. This is a speed defense, and now they added McKinley. You'd think, oh, this is going to be a great defense to rush the passer. But if you look at the pass pressure rates from this past divisional weekend, the Falcons had the lowest pass pressure rate for the defense. The Eagles allowed the lowest pass pressure rate, and the Eagles on the flip side had the highest pass pressure rate against the Falcons. So they were able to. So from that perspective, the Eagles had a big win.
What did you think of the game plan they had for Foles?
They said, hey, we're not going to throw vertical passes. I'll give you a couple metrics here. On short passes, or passes thrown 10 or fewer yards downfield, Nick Foles, 19 of 23 for 179 yards, 7.8 yards per attempt. Just fantastic numbers. That's superb. You can get 7.8 yards per attempt. Overall, you're doing great. And they did it on short passes. And they said, okay, we're only going to have you throw 7 vertical passes. That's 11 or more yards downfield. He completes 4 for 67 yards, 9.6 yards per attempt. Not a great number, but when you're doing so well on the short passes, you don't have to do well on the vertical passes. So it really worked it well for what he's doing well right now.
Yeah, for me, I just didn't. If I'm an Atlanta fan today, I am not happy with the game plan Dan Quinn put in.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. They only had Ryan. Again, they needed to get Philadelphia into some sort of a shootout game. But the problem for them was, I mentioned that Philadelphia had the highest pass pressure rate among any teams in the divisional playoff weekend. The Falcons the previous week had allowed the highest pass pressure rate they allowed all season against the Rams. So I think that the Falcons, part of the reason that they did this, again, it's not the kind of team that they are, but their pass blocking has been struggling of late for the past 5 or 6 weeks. It's been not that good, and so I think they figured we can't go in a drop-back mode. But that's what they needed to do because they needed to get Philadelphia down on the scoreboard and then make Foles try to throw those vertical passes.
Yeah, because other than the 2 turnovers that Philadelphia had that led to the 10 points, Atlanta just could not do anything offensively, and a lot of that I think has to do with the preparation in Jim Schwartz. I mean, a lot of Eagles players after the game said that they knew what play was coming on 4th down, that they had a lot of pre-snap alerts, and that they were well aware of some of the things that the Falcons were ready to do.
Matt Ryan on his short passes, he gained only 4.6 yards per attempt, and he had a 10 total QBR. That's ESPN Stats and Information's metric that measures quarterback performance. 100 is perfect, 0 is as bad as you get. He had a 10 total QBR on short passes. So they knew it was coming, and they were able to shut it down on vertical passes. Ryan throws 10 vertical passes, completes 5 for only 82 yards, and he had 7 of his 10 targets go to Jones. So it was basically, if we're going vertical, we're going to Jones, or we're going to nobody else, and that's just a very limited game plan.
Yeah, and the fact that I thought Fletcher Cox really was a huge difference in the game. I mean, we talked about him and the matchup with Ben Garland, but he dominated that battle, and it really, I thought, threw off Atlanta's ability to do a lot up the middle, and he kept getting constant pressure up the front.
He did. I mean, Devontae Freeman, 10 rushes for 7 yards. I mean, Coleman did better and such, but there were so many times when he was winning the point of attack, and Atlanta hasn't been. They've been run blocking better than they've been pass blocking, but Philadelphia led the league this year in good blocking rate allowed. That's my metric that measures run blocking effectiveness. Their defense led the league in that. So to say that the Falcons were going to lean on that ground game, and to say they got their good blocking rate was just under 40%, which is not good for them. It's better than what the Eagles have been giving up all season. They did okay considering the competition, but it's just not what they weren't going to win that battle consistently enough to say we can lean on that, and that's exactly what they tried to do.
Looked like the wind played a factor in that game too. We saw the first throw of the game from Foles just quack around, but you wonder how much that played, with Matt Ryan as well, because Julio Jones had a big game. They threw the ball to him though. They were forcing the ball to him. 16 throws to him. He caught 9 of them, but it seemed that they were just trying too hard, and you wonder if the wind played a little bit of a factor in the game.
Yep, only 4 vertical completions for 65 yards for him, that's a solid day, but it's not anything to write home about. He averaged less than 10 yards on short pass attempts too, so he didn't do great on vertical passes. His short passes were pedestrian, and again, so much of their offense is going through them. Only 2 vertical passes to Mohamed Sanu, and their short passes were hit and miss. Also, again, fewer than 5 yards per attempt for them as a team. So they just couldn't get. You look and say, okay, you guys didn't have a dink and dunk passing game, and that's fine if you can't go vertical because of the wind. You better be able to throw the ball dink and dunk, and if you can't pass block well, you better be able to dink and dunk. But I keep saying Sarkisian's not a very creative play call, and it showed up.
The Eagles during the week had said that they went back and watched Nick Foles' 2013. Did the Eagles' offense resemble more of that 2013 offense?
That 2013 offense was great in a vertical perspective, and I think maybe they looked at it and said that's what we can do, but they didn't have it. In fact, I'm glad that they didn't have him try to throw a bunch of vertical passes because, given that wind and given that when he was trying some of those passes, some of them were – they were airmailed. It was wow. You'd see the ball fly through the air and go, that's not the kind of throw you want him to make. So they said, look, we know you can be accurate rather than try and get you to throw. I think that maybe that's what they took away from it because if you look at 2013, it was the downfield passes are really what makes him stand out. But they also said, I think, look, you're really this accurate, and to complete over 80% of your short passes is really big, especially when you make it that big part of the game. So kudos on the game plan.
And not to mention the. That late vertical throw to end the half with 1 second left. That ends up being a huge play in that game, the throw to Alshon Jeffrey right there on the sideline.
It does, and to say that that's the one time, okay, we need you to make one vertical throw, and we need to make the one big play. And you think about it, he makes that one big play to set up that field goal attempt, and then at the end of the game, when Matt Ryan's trying to throw his one big play, he's nowhere near as good. So it's to ask Foles, you just need to make a couple of vertical pass attempts in this game. And I think again, if the wind wasn't as much of a factor, they probably have him throw vertically more often. But again, they said we know our wind, we know the situation here, we know this stadium, so we don't want Nick doing more than what he needs to do. But hey, to hit that pass is awesome.
Well, they came out with it, and it was a quack, but they ended up getting the pass interference, but then Ajayi fumbled, and, Ajayi, who had 15 carries, they looked like they were trying to go to him, but then they went right back. They ended up saying, you know what, we're going back to the committee approach.
They needed to go back to the committee approach. He's just his ball security's been he's had ball security issues for a time. This is not anything brand new for him, and it's going to happen on occasion. And you just hope you can live with it and such. But when you've got as many backs as they have, and you've got Blunt, you've got Clement, and they didn't even have Smallwood active. But if they had him, they've got a fourth option. They can go there, and the Aguilar will run a couple times. So when they've got these other options, you don't have to go with the Giant. If he's starting to fumble the ball, maybe just give him a break and have him come back in. But I think that they need to. I think they need to not make him a bell cow because you're not going to be able to trust his drops or ball security.
It's his third fumble since coming to Philadelphia. It led to the 3 points, and then the punt that hits off of Rasul Douglas and then Bremen that leads to the other touchdown. Casey, I've been saying all day, I thought the Eagle defense was the best unit of all of the 4 games this weekend.
They're the one defense that really showed. In fact, none of the other defense showed up. Jacksonville, their defenders are talking big right now. They gave up 42 points. The Patriots, that said more about the Titans' offense. You see, the Titans just fired their head coach because of how bad that offense played. And the Vikings' offense is nowhere near. Hey, one big play at the end, but they were just about to lose. If I were to grade the platoons out, I would say that the Eagles' platoon was the best of the weekend. I agree.
All right, let's get into some of the matchups here. Let's start with yesterday. The Minnesota, the way they come back in that one. They're up 17-0, then all of a sudden Breeze brings them back. Let's first ask this question. Philly versus Minnesota or New Orleans, who's a better matchup?
Oh, Minnesota, 10 times out of 10. Their defense is nowhere near as good as people think they are. Their offensive line has been inconsistent as heck this year. The New Orleans offensive line has been fantastic. I'd rather take Case Keenum. You see him. I mean, hey, it's just a few weeks ago the Vikings are saying, geez, we might want to bench Keenum and put in Bridgewater after Bridgewater finally got healthy. And this is after Keenum had done as well as he had. They don't trust him. He throws up ducks, and it's not something the Breeze does. No, this is a much better matchup for Philadelphia.
Okay, I know we'll go over the matchups deeper on Friday's show, but Minnesota goes up 17-0 in that game. What did New Orleans exploit to get back in that game?
First off, they decided, they said, we're still going to go, we're not just going to go all vertical pass, we're going to still lean in our run again. They did not allow themselves to say we're going to just be a one-dimensional team. They still went that way. And two, their pass rush pressure was finally able to get Keenan to make that mistake when he throws that ball up that Marcus Williams intercepts. I mean, Minnesota allowed them back in the contest by making mistakes like that. And again, New Orleans, they didn't, they in the past, they would have said, okay, Breeze, you just drop back and let's throw the ball 60 times. This time they said, we're going to stick to a game plan because that's the way it's going to get downfield. So kudos to them for being patient.
I thought Peyton had a tough day at the office for New Orleans.
I think he very well did. And Marcus Williams, I'll tell you, I'm Williams, and I know people he's been a real good player this year, but I went back and looked up after I saw him make that missed tackle, something cued me to go, I need to go back and look at his write-up for ESPN's Insider section, our scouting group. Our scouting group said that in college, Williams would have a tendency to go for the big hit instead of and he would miss plays because of it. He'd try and go for the big hit. And I don't know that that's exactly what he did there, but he was definitely more aggressive than he needed to be and then put his head down. You can't have a low percentage safety in that play, and they did.
What do you attribute the lack of run game again for New Orleans this week? Is that just Minnesota's defense really good? I mean, I looked at Minnesota entering these playoffs. They only carried 24 for 80 yards, so Kamara and Ingram both kind of got shut down. I looked at New Orleans a little closer and realized, they had that 8-game win streak, but then we looked at that schedule a little closer, and they didn't really beat somebody really outstanding during that 8-game streak. So I don't know that New Orleans was as outstanding as maybe the streak and the record suggested.
I would probably agree with that, and also the one thing the Vikings do, they've done a terrible job this year allowing good blocking rates for the other team. Meaning, and I think that might be part schematically who they are, where they say we're not going to try and win a bunch of point of attack battles. We'd like to, and we're going to do what we can, but we're not about winning point of attack battles. We're about making sure that our defense holds its gaps. So when people run the ball, we can shed our blocks and go make the tackles and keep the gains to a minimum. We've got great safeties, too. So I think that was a big part of it, where New Orleans wasn't getting as good of a good block rate as they'd expected, but even when they did, they weren't getting breakaway runs. You're getting 5- and 6-yard runs.
Minnesota also, Keenan was 25 for 40, 300 yards, a touchdown. They ran the ball not great, 29 for 95. But in the end, they put 29 points on the board. How are they able to do that with lackluster, play from, the running game? And I guess Keenum played 25 for 40 for 300 yards. He played a pretty good game.
He did well enough, and that's the thing, though. He can be a big play passer. Remember, if you look at Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph, you take just that trio and say, okay, all 32
Thielen was great.
Thielen's great, and Diggs had the great play at the end of the game. He's been playing great at the end of the second half of the year. He's not just in a couple of games. He's been playing fantastic. And Rudolph, you take that three and say, give me any other team and say, give me your top 2 receivers and your tight end. Where does Minnesota rank there? Top 10, maybe top 5. That's a really good combination. And Keenum, for what he is, he's a risk taker, but he's got the playmakers that if he puts the ball up there, they can score some points. So they are a dangerous offense.
All right, we'll get a little deeper into the Eagles and Vikings later on. What happened with the Steelers? I mean, did they overlook Jacksonville? Is Jacksonville just flat out better than them? They beat them twice now. I wasn't surprised Jacksonville won. It was how they won that surprised me.
If you go into that game and you say Pittsburgh's going to score 42 points, how many times do you think that Jacksonville's going to win that game?
0.
Yeah, 0. And the thing is, Pittsburgh, what's Tomlin's the whole thing for Tomlin, if you say what's his greatest attribute, he gets his teams fired up. That team wasn't fired up for more than the first quarter of the game. I mean, it's 21-0, and you're not, and they didn't even look like they cared. And then they finally started stepping up and caring. But so he didn't get that part done. He got out coached. The time management at the end of the game was a huge issue. I mean, it's one of those things where you look at this team and you go, this team, you're running 4th and 1, and you're running pitch sweeps instead of saying, and when asking your receivers to block instead of saying, hey, we got 3 All-Pro linemen and we got an All-Pro running back, and you got a 6'4", 250-pound quarterback who's got the best sneak rate is since 2004. The best, he's the most successful sneak rate quarterback in the league since 2004, and you decided to run a pitch sweep. It's just the game planning in that game was just atrocious. The Steelers deserved to lose.
Yeah, it's the kind of game that if Tomlin wasn't so entrenched in that, the Steelers are a very conservative bunch when it comes to making decisions on the coach, you would say this guy's got to go with the way he coached this game.
And the thing is, it's all the time. His team, mind you, his team has done very well during the regular season. But then again, you say, okay, how many? They have more Pro Bowlers than any other team, more All Pros than any other team. Yeah, okay, you can go out and you can play against Green Bay and stick it up for a period of time, and then come back and win at the end and go, look how a great team we are. No, a great team would have destroyed Green Bay. A great team destroys Cincinnati. A great team destroys Baltimore. You don't win those games on last-second field goals. So, and you went up against a team in Jacksonville that was fired up to play you and can hit big plays if you let them. And the defense is just atrocious to have. I mean, Shazier was a big part of that defense, but when you lose Shazier and the defense just completely falls apart, it just says something. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's a play caller issue. I think it's a Tomlin into how he directs that entire team.
I mean, they go for an onside kick. I mean, what the heck are they doing? But forget what the downfalls of Pittsburgh was. What happened to Jacksonville's defense? Because, again, we said, I'm not surprised they won. I'm surprised how they won. So what happened to Jacksonville's defense? Because if they're going to beat New England, they can't give up 42.
No, they can't give up 40 because that New England's not going to play. You're not going to make the same kind of mistakes that Pittsburgh made. And a lot of that's Antonio Brown. When you see some of the catches he's making, it's like, okay, he can do that, and nobody else in the league probably can do what he did on a couple of those plays. So that was a big part of it. Their run defense, Jacksonville's run defense has been nowhere near as good. I don't think that their pass rush yesterday was better, but a lot of that was Ben just holding on to the football because he was trying to hit a bunch of vertical passes. But their run defense isn't anywhere near as good. I think there are ways that there are good ways, things you can exploit in coverage. You can get them to play out of position. That team can make a lot of mistakes, and right now they're making a mistake, by the way, by saying, hey, we're going to the Super Bowl. Hey, didn't you guys just see a team that overlooked the other team, and now you guys are overlooking the Patriots? You might want to take a look in the mirror.
Well, yeah, and we'll obviously get into those games a little bit more, but Jacksonville now with that defense, the way they match up with New England, I mean, we know what happens to Brady when he gets some pressure. This is a team that can get to Brady. Jacksonville can get to him.
They can, but I just did a grade I did an article last week for ESPN's Insider section that looked at the grade all the offensive lines and front sevens for all the playoff teams. And New England's offensive line was an A- in pass block. They haven't been quite as good this year of late. They've kind of taken a bit of a step back, and Brady has felt pressure even when he's not doing anywhere near as well when he gets a little bit of pressure. But I'm looking at Dante Scarnecchia, the offensive line coach for the Patriots, going, I'm sure he's going to have a good game plan for that defense and wear those guys out.
And then, New England did what they were supposed to do. They just manhandled Tennessee. Tennessee decides to part ways with the coach after they said they were going to bring him back. Now they decide that they're going to part ways. But New England puts 35 up. They only give up 14. And it seems like this New England team, everyone's just kind of overlooking and just like kind of taking them for granted, like, it's just New England. But I don't feel like people think that this New England team is an unbeatable New England team.
They're not, and we thought that the Titans. I thought at least the Titans were going to go up there and make it more competitive. But I'll tell you one thing that New England is very patient. You get to a lot of teams if they got down at home and the Titans go down and score, and suddenly you're behind. A lot of teams would get rattled, and the Patriots said, "We're still running our game plan. We're not going to change a thing. We're just going to go keep doing what we're doing." And the problem for them is that you can run the ball on them, and the Titans could run the ball on things, and the Titans had some success. But they're going to make you do 12-play drives. That's what they're good at. And say, look, we're not the best defense, but we're going to make you put together these big 12-play drives. And a lot of teams just aren't good enough to do it.
All right, there's the weekend divisional round. It's New England, Jacksonville on 97.3 ESPN this Sunday, and then Philadelphia and Minnesota. The number one seed Eagles are a 3.5-point underdog at home against the Vikings. That whole story about the quarterback exchanges, I mean, Keenum and Foles playing together and Bradford getting traded, and that whole thing is crazy. So there's a lot of crazy stories between Philly and Minnesota. And, of course, if Minnesota wins, they get to play at home. So there's a lot of storylines that we will break down on Friday's edition with KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash. All right, pal, we're looking forward to that.
Appreciate it, man.